On this episode, the topics we talk about are
Star Wars,
Pokemon,
Shantae,
Samurai Jack,
and Thor Ragnarok.
Now strap in and get ready to go
Beyond the Start Button!
It's Joshua, the Ubernerd, and we're here with the Beyond the Start Button podcast, a podcast where we talk about what we're passionate about every single month. It's a monthly podcast. We have a few topics that we're going to be speaking about today, and we're going to be talking about all kinds of different things, from comic books to actual books to television. Actually, we should just call it shows now. We don't really even need to call it television because most of it's not on TV anymore. Who watches television anymore? And then we also got anime, manga, video games, all that stuff here in this podcast. That's what we talk about. We are part of the Arcade Archives Network, a network blog site that's we trying to bring back the virtual, kind of make a virtual arcade, kind of like a virtual hangout spot where everyone comes and talks about, things of the day and maybe some nostalgic trips to the back in the day and whatnot. And what podcast will not be complete without the Zwei to my Ruby? And if you know who I'm talking about, then you've probably got it. But anyways, the Zwei to my Ruby, Danny, the ultrasonic player. Yay!
Woo! Yo, what's happening, Arcaders?
Alrighty. Well, Danny, I'm so glad that we're here for this month. We've got a lot to talk about.
Yep.
So let's get started with your topics of this month. Your first topic is kind of an interesting one. And one that you saw on, I believe it was, on the official Disney Facebook page?
Yes,
okay.
Actually it was. Well, actually it was, not even on Disney's Facebook page, but rather on their hub. Because, I'm a cast member over there, and, basically, I was just printing out my schedule, and I just so happened to see right on their front page, because they like to do like a little like on this day in Disney history, or on this week in Disney history, and it was basically, this was like a few weeks back, where they actually said that just a few weeks ago, as of this recording anyway, that right around this time, 5 years ago, two really big things had happened. Or one, Wreck-It Ralph, which probably one of the best video game movies to be made as so far, debuted in theaters, and that was really the big thing. And actually, let's focus our attention on that for a moment, because as I'm sure many video game fans know, and many arcaders know, there have been several attempts at trying to make movie adaptations of video games with basically mixed results. I think that's probably the best way to put it, because
Two. Excuse me, I got something in my throat.
Oh, okay, all right, got it. Okay, so basically, there has yet to be one to really be, there has yet to be a film of a video game that is both critically and commercially praised. But with Wreck-It Ralph, Disney took a shot at it, and boy, did it really deliver in the best way possible, especially for those of us who were around as kids during the time of arcades. Specifically, during the original and true golden age of arcade games during the early 80s. Of course, me being born in 84, I didn't know about these gems until much later on in life. But, having seen many different shows or specifically shows that do retrospectives on that time period, it was, and having had the chance to play a lot of those arcade cabinets, it really is a special moment in time. And of course, having worked at Disney Quest, for many years, it definitely is, it's definitely an experience that you can't really put a price tag on it, because it's that special. And, as many arcaders know, playing on the arcade cabinets like Donkey Kong Jr., and yes, Donkey Kong 3, just to give, Stanley the Boogman some attention,
Ray will be happy.
Exactly. It really is amazing to see how video games truly got their start. And how it laid down the foundation for everything that we know now today. But with Wreck-It Ralph, it really is, a true love letter to that time period. But more than that, it also kind of introduced us to some original characters, ones that we never really knew before, specifically like Wreck-It Ralph himself, Fix-It Felix Jr., Sergeant Calhoun, Turbo, and aka King Candy, Turbo-tastic, and of course Vanellope von Schweetz. So I mean, and the thing is, the beauty about this film, and this is really really a personal thing for me, and I know for you too, because I mean, maybe you were working on that day, but that morning there was like a special thing where cast members got a chance to have basically a cast preview of Wreck-It Ralph. And now, at the time, I kind of knew what it was, but I wasn't really 100% sure. I mean, I had seen the trailers, but I decided, okay, I'll go in and see it. And so I went along with everybody else, early in the morning, and we went to go see the movie, and oh my gosh. Now, there's many great ways to kickstart the day, but let me tell you, seeing not just a good Disney animated film, but an incredibly amazing video game movie, and just movie in general, is really a great way to kickstart the whole day, because from start to finish, it's just a great, awesome film, and with a good human message in it, without being preachy, and just a really, really awesome kick butt soundtrack. Both the score by Henry Jackman, and of course all the other songs that followed, particularly Owl City's "When Can I See You Again," which really made me an Owl City fan, because I knew who they were because the song Fireflies and whatnot. But with "When Can I See You Again," that one was a really awesome.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that group. Well, I didn't say group; it's because it's just one guy. But I really enjoy that him too. I think that he's a really very poetic songwriter.
Yeah,
and you have to kind of listen to his songs a lot to understand what he's talking about, and I think that's kind of interesting in itself. But yeah, I do agree. That's one of my favorite songs from Owl City. Yeah, is in that soundtrack.
Yeah, and it's just an amazing film, and and it's just, again, if you're a fan of video games in general, regardless of whether you're old school or new school, you really owe it to yourself to have that film in there. And for me, again, being able to be part of a cast preview for a film like that is really amazing, and I really wish Disney would do more of those, because it's really special. But still, being able to do that was just amazing.
Right, and now I agree. I totally agree with that. I thought Wreck-It Ralph was probably one of the best video game movies ever made, because it was definitely made as a love letter to video game fans, classic and new and old school, and also had cameos of video game characters that we know and love. So, yes. Like the Hedgehog was indeed one of them. Bowser, Dig Dug, Frogger. Even had the Street Fighter characters. Even had a Mortal Kombat character.
I know.
Yeah.
Oh, and one other thing too, and this is one that really kind of was really interesting, is that during the Oscars that followed, it came down to, it was either, well, granted, I mean, there were a lot of different nominations for Best Animated Film,
right? But
Wreck-It Ralph was on that list, as well as Pixar's Brave,
right? And
unfortunately, really, you can imagine which film ended up taking it.
Yeah, and Brave was a good film, but yes, I'm more emotionally attached to Wreck-It Ralph, because it's more about video games and more about something that I'm really passionate about. However, I do love Brave. Brave is a great movie, and deserved to win.
Yeah, that's true.
But it would have been good to see a video game movie finally win an Academy Award. Would have been really cool.
Yeah, I know, and even it's funny because even Bowser, somebody had put a picture of Bowser, like with the caption "Raw, Wreck-It Ralph got robbed." So believe me, there were a lot of people out there who felt that Wreck-It Ralph deserved to have more recognition than it got, but still.
And the coolest thing about when Wreck-It Ralph came out is I remember getting that was when the Wii U first came out, and I got Sonic All-Stars Racing Transformed, and Wreck-It Ralph was a character in there that you can play. So I thought that was pretty cool. In fact, I think that was probably the only reason why I bought the game at first, and then honestly, except for Mario Kart, I really think one of the best racing games on the system was Sonic All-Star Racing's Transformed. I never played the original, but Transformed was really, really cool. I did like it very, very much. But we're getting off of Wreck-It Ralph, so let's stay on Wreck-It Ralph.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a huge release. I would have wished that Disney would have put the money into it and revamped Disney Quest and gave it a Wreck-It Ralph theme. I think it would have worked better than having the NBA experience. But that's just my opinion and not the opinion of the company that does pay all bills. So, let's just move on from that, shall we? Alright, so the next thing we would talk about is also something else that happened around that same time, right?
Yes.
So, let's talk about the acquisition of Disney buying Lucasfilm.
Yeah, that was a pretty big deal, because, and mind you, I wasn't really privy to all of the details and especially, how George Lucas, works, or specifically what his mindset always was, particularly when he was first starting out as a filmmaker, that he would do that. Because, for the longest time, and of course, as Star Wars fans know, George pretty much started out as an indie filmmaker. A lot of his earliest films had, he did have to deal with a lot of studio interference, which of course is not anything new, because sometimes some directors have had to deal with that, especially one in particular, as of in recent times, as of this post. But basically George decided that he would create his own company, so he didn't have to deal with a lot of studio interference and just have them, distribute his films. But he would be the one to have, full control over his films for the most part. And in the studio, the only thing they had to do was be like, okay, we'll just distribute it for you. But the idea that he would actually go so far as to sell his own company to Disney was a very interesting thing, especially given his background and his history with studios. In fact, I remember there were a lot of people that were kind of making jokes about it on YouTube. Some were saying, buying that much, or rather the number that he sold it for, and and all this stuff, or saying like, oh no, next thing you know, you're gonna have, and just all kinds of crazy jokes, and thinking, oh no, Star Wars is doomed, or because there was one YouTuber who said that. But basically, reactions were mixed. And a lot of people really didn't know what to make of it. I know I wasn't sure what to make of it. But fast forward many years later, we've had a new animated series come out, and that was also a bit of a contention for some fans, because it turns out the folks that worked on Clone Wars, they weren't, Dave Filoni and his team weren't yet ready to throw in the towel. They hadn't yet worked their way towards the ending. I mean, of course, we now know what that ending would have been. According to the story group, a lot of those deleted scenes and a lot of those deleted episodes that pretty much were already finished are technically canon still. Yeah. I think on YouTube they were they had animatics of them, but not yet fully polished and whatnot. So that was kind of a little bit of a point of contention with fans. But fortunately, though, we now have an animated series done by the same folks. And is also now winding down. But at least, with this show, with Rebels, at least Dave Filoni and his team are able to work towards the ending that they want, and not have it be cut off at the seams. And of course, Force Awakens, which pretty much did gangbusters and reinvigorated Star Wars again. And now with Rogue One, a year later, and now with The Last Jedi, it's. All in all, to say that it's good to be a Star Wars fan right now would be an understatement, because in a lot of ways, Star Wars has now once again come back into the public mainstream and into the public consciousness much more than before. Granted, it always had, but it was kind of put on the back burner in a lot of respects. Mm-hmm. And but now that it's back in a really huge way, and I don't think it really was as mainstream during the Clone Wars era.
I feel it was, at least with Star Wars fans and with kids that started to watch it, because believe it or not, we have a whole group of adults now that grew up watching Clone Wars. That was their Star Wars.
Yes.
One of the things that that have been talked about in other podcasts, especially one of my favorites, so I'll give a shout out to Skywalking Through Neverland, because they're one of my favorite podcasts. But one of the things that we talk about is the generations of Star Wars fans. We have the original trilogy fans, the people who grew up in 1977 and watched Star Wars for the first time on the big screen. Empire Strikes Back, and even Return of the Jedi. Then we have the kids that grew up in what we call the Dark Times. That's my generation. The
Mine
Dark
too.
Times, starts at the end of Return of the Jedi and goes all the way to kind of when the prequels start, coming out. So this is the time of, we didn't have a Star Wars movie. We didn't know if there was ever going to be another Star Wars movie.
And
all we had was the books and the comics and the action figures, and they released Star Wars on VHS, and then later on they released it on DVD.
Mm-hmm.
But then, of course, at the end of our generation was the special edition, which is kind of reinvigorated Star Wars for everyone again.
Yep.
Bringing those movies out, and whether you like the special edition or not, it did reinvent Star Wars. And
yes, it did.
Honestly, personally, I don't mind the special edition. I know that there's a lot of people out there that want there's nothing wrong with that. Believe me, there is nothing wrong with the original, because I grew up with that original stuff. But I do like the special edition. I do like what it adds to the movies.
Yeah.
And then of course we have the whole generation of kids that grew up on prequels. So on, episodes 1, 2, and 3. And then now we have the kids who grew up on Clone Wars. Now we're going to have the kids that are grown up, that are going to be grown up on, who are going to grow up watching Rebels, watching, Rey and Finn, and, this whole Force Awakens trilogy.
Yeah.
I think that's going to reinvigorate it again, and I'm very excited to see The Last Jedi. And I feel that the studio, both Disney and Lucasfilm, have a very big confidence in the director.
Yes.
Because if they didn't, they wouldn't give him an entire trilogy to work on all by himself.
Yes, and that's another thing too that I'm going to get to. But before we do, I think part of the appeal of why Star Wars has come back into the lexicon is because you have a lot of storytellers, multiple storytellers, but they're all working together in one cohesion. That not only they're able to make the story more airtight, but I think it's also because the dialogue in these new movies is a lot more. It's not clunky. Mm-hmm. It's not. Or it's not wooden, so to speak. Because that was a big point of contention for a lot of fans during the prequels. That the dialogue was just too clunky and whatnot. And so, which unfortunately hampered a lot of to a lot of people's. To their point of view, and even to the point of view of certain cast members during the prequels, that was a very big point of contention. That's not the case with these new films, and because of that, we're able to emotionally invest in the characters, which you should. You're supposed to. And so because of that, you're able to not only emotionally invest in them, but you're rooting for them. You want them to come out on top, which they will, but it's the journey, it's their hero's journey that you see them go through that's done in a more realistic fashion that you can't help but root for them in a lot of ways. And the fact that they're taking these characters in new directions, that's opposite of what George wanted. Yes, I mean, on the one hand, because
not necessarily. I'm sure George Lucas probably has a little bit of say in what they do.
Actually, he does not.
Really?
He does not. He had done an interview where he basically did give them some story treatments.
Right.
And essentially, they took those story treatments and put them in a dumpster fire.
Oh, wow.
To say the least. Because, according to George, they realized they just didn't want to have him involved because the direction that they were going to take the current sequel trilogy was still very much contradictory to what he wanted.
Right.
And, so, I mean, granted, that's not to say they didn't take some elements from his story treatments, because they did. But as a whole, for the most part, they did not really do that. They pretty much just scrapped most of it and took a few things, but only what they felt they needed. And everything else they just kind of trashed. Mm-hmm. But the end results kind of speak for itself. And the thing is, I mean... And the truth is, personally, I feel that as much as... I mean, one can credit George for coming up with all these ideas and concepts because that's his greatest strength. Right. He knows how to be able to come up with good concepts and ideas. The problem is and this is his kryptonite, is that he does not know how to basically flesh them out in a way that feels organic. Fortunately, though, people like Dave Filoni and even Pablo Hidalgo and all the other, and the story group at Lucasfilm, and Kathleen Kennedy especially, they all know exactly how to be able to crank it out. And again, the end results from the previous films that have come out, including our current animated series, Star Wars Rebels, it speaks for itself.
I'd even throw in Forces of Destiny too, because even though these are short, micro, stories, that these stories are done very, very well, and even though they're aimed more towards a female audience, as a Star Wars fan, I still watch it and go, "Wow, that's really cool." These characters, you get to see these characters a little bit more fleshed out. We get to spend a little bit more time with characters like Jyn Erso, and we get to know them a little bit more. And yes, it is geared more towards a girl audience, but it doesn't shun away from letting everyone come in and kind of watch these and kind of be introduced to these characters in this way.
Yeah, and the fact, and again, getting to what you had said before, the fact that Rian Johnson, the director of Last Jedi, is now being given his own trilogy, essentially, for him to kind of, cut loose,
as he please,
do as he wants, basically. Yeah. The fact that they're giving him carte blanche to do what he wants with his own trilogy is very interesting, because it really shows, okay, well, what can they do? What else can they do? Now, my understanding is that this one is not going to involve anybody from the Skywalker clan.
Right. As far as we know now, and we're not privy to any information or anything like that. Disney doesn't give us any kind of special information or anything like that. We know just as much as you all know out there. As far as we know, this trilogy will have nothing to do with the Skywalker saga. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that we can't use legacy characters in the saga, but it's going to take place in a whole different region. It's going to take place in a area that we haven't explored before, and it's going to talk about stuff we have never talked about before. So who knows?
Do you think, in your opinion, that they might talk about maybe... Do you think that these three films may harken back to the Old Republic? And I'm talking like old Republic, like maybe KOTOR territory. And that's Knights of the Old Republic for those of you who never played the games. Let
me be frank. And actually, they talked about this on one of the YouTube shows. I know I'm name dropping a lot. I'm sorry, but Star Wars Explained. He talked about this too. I don't really think they're going to go all the way past Episode 1 right now. I think if they're going to do something, it's either going to take place either during or after either the original trilogy or the sequel trilogy. Maybe somewhere far away from the events of what's happening. But for the most part, it's going to be something completely different that we haven't seen before. They're going to take place on worlds that we haven't seen before. They're going to have characters that we've never seen before. Now, does that mean that we won't be able to have people, we won't have guest stars or maybe cameos from different characters? No. But it could be something potentially dangerous, potentially exciting. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't have characters like, let's say, Thrawn, who has never had a live-action appearance.
Very true.
Appear, especially if it's taking place in the outer regions, the wild space where his race lives. We could potentially have Thrawn maybe show up in live action. And there's a couple of animated characters I would love to see in live action movies. We've already seen one, Saw Gerrera.
Yes.
He is the first animated character to jump to live action.
Yeah.
But I would like to see others. If there's one character I feel deserves to be live action, it's Ahsoka.
Yes.
Ahsoka Tano, who, by the way, I believe she is still alive, so hashtag Ahsoka lives.
Yeah.
I would love to see a trilogy with her in it. I would love to see either, to be honest though, I'm kind of tired of storytelling in between episodes 3 and 4. I'm kind of tired of that era right now because everyone and their mom has done a story in that era. I would like to see something that takes place, either honestly, and we'll get to this more later on when I get to my points, but I would like to see some stuff taking place after the original trilogy, during the sequel trilogy. There are 30 years in between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens that you can play with, and there is a lot of story meat in there. And if you don't believe me, there's an entire trilogy of books called Aftermath, which is an amazing book series. Is it perfect? No, but it is good, and I highly suggest it. Bloodlines, Star Wars Bloodlines, which is an amazing book as well, takes place in that era.
Just 5 years. 5 years before.
Yeah, 5 years before. There is a lot of story meat that happens. Shattered Empire, which was a comic series that came out not too long after Lucasfilm was bought by
Disney.
By Disney. They did a Shattered Empire, which takes place literally takes place right after they celebrate.
Yeah, right after the Battle of Endor.
Right after the main Battle of Endor. That's where the story takes place, and then goes on from there. You get to meet Poe Dameron's parents, which is kind of interesting. Yes. So, I feel that there's a lot of story meat in that era, and there's so many years between those two movies that you can tell a lot of different stories.
Yeah. Do you think that's what Dave Filoni's working on? Because I had
heard, don't know.
I had heard that he is working on another animated series for Star Wars.
I don't know. I have no idea what they're working on. I would love to know, and I'm very sure that we're probably going to hear something probably next year, maybe year after. I know that, I think they're probably holding a lot back because of The Last Jedi. They want that to come out and simmer out for a little bit, and then they can start announcing other things that are going to happen. Yeah. We know that Solo movie is coming out.
What are your thoughts on? What are your thoughts? Because I know there was a bit of a director shakeup.
From what I heard, the original director was going to make it more of a comedy movie, and it didn't work.
Yeah,
and
you can't.
That's what I kind of like about what Lucasfilm is doing is they want to make sure, and to be quite honest, they really have to make sure that all these Star Wars movies are a hit. Because if they're not a hit, they're not going to make money.
Yeah.
Now, to be quite honest, I would really like them to stop making a movie every single year. Give us time to breathe a little bit. Let us soak in the story. Give us our books and our comics and stuff like that for people who want to, expand the story a little bit. But give people time to breathe between movies. I don't think a year is enough time. I think give it at least 2 years before you send out something else. We're gonna kind of get that with Solo, because Solo will be coming out, I believe, next year. And then after Solo comes out next year, we're gonna have probably about a year and a half before Episode 9 comes out. So, we're gonna have a little bit of a reprieve. But guys, I know that Star Wars is making a lot of money. I understand why you are, shoving it down our throats essentially, but you gotta stop. Okay?
Yeah, I think
because there are some fans that are tired of it, and they don't want to get into it anymore because there's just so much.
I think maybe they're trying to do the whole, strike while the iron's hot type thing.
And even with this television series, or this series, I guess we shouldn't really call them television series anymore.
No.
This series that they're going to have on the Disney streaming service.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Yes.
Is it going to be live action?
Live action, yes, sir.
But what is it going to entail?
That's all. We don't know. All we know is that they're doing a live action series. It's going to be exclusive to this streaming service that Disney is going to have. So we don't know what it's going to entail. Who's going to direct it? We don't know. We have no idea what's going to happen. There are so many things that we can do. Even TV series, I think, would be better. I mean, because look at DC right now. Right now, DC is still trying to find its footing in movies.
Yeah.
But
that's an understatement.
But DC does do TV well.
Yes, they do.
So you have Flash, you have Arrow, you have Supergirl, you have Legends of Tomorrow. These are all big, TV shows, and they're doing very, very well because there are people at helm that love this stuff, and kind of doing a Guardians of the Galaxy type thing where they're kind of bringing these characters who usually don't get the limelight and, fleshing them out and making you care about them. I do enjoy that. But yeah, so I can see how a Star Wars series would work because the original idea for Star Wars, the idea that George Lucas had was he wanted it to make it like the old sci-fi serials that you would watch.
Yeah, the Old Republic serials.
Yeah, that you would watch before movies back when he was a kid.
Yeah.
And, I feel that's kind of where our movie system is nowadays. Is it's kind of that old classic, come back next week and you'll see a new movie type deal.
Yeah.
So I feel that's where our movie system is going, but that's another discussion for another podcast. But but yeah, I feel that Star Wars could work on TV, but you have to do it right.
Exactly.
And you have to get people who are passionate about it, and you have to make sure that it's done right. And I feel that Lucasfilm so far is doing a good job of doing that. In fact, they're even firing people if they don't feel that they're up to what they have. Now, I'm not too worried about it because Rogue One went through the same thing. Rogue One had reshoots. Rogue One had a different director.
Yeah.
Changed musical scores, composers. All
Really?
that different stuff. Yes.
So Michael Giacchino wasn't
the original one. No.
Huh.
So we can speculate all we want to, but honestly, we don't know. I'm excited about it. I'm excited about what they're doing with Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. Very happy about that. I can't wait to see what they do with that. I'm very happy to see all the things that they're going to do. I just feel that one movie a year is pushing it. Because I feel that we need to breathe a little bit before we move on to the next one. So,
that would make for a good question.
Yeah, that would.
For
all
good
right,
yeah.
that would be we'll come back to that for the end of the podcast. But I think that's a good idea. So let's move on. So the next thing you had was Thor Ragnarok.
Yes.
Now this is going to be a spoiler-free review because some people in this audience, mainly me, have not seen Thor Ragnarok yet. So do not spoil anything. But please tell us about Thor Ragnarok. Did you like it?
Yes, okay. I did very much. Even more than what I was expecting.
Okay.
Again, I had seen the first Thor movie. It was okay. It was pretty good. I do like the thematic message in that film where Thor has to kind of learn humility in order to gain his power back, and he does. He does learn the humility that he needs. Thor 2: The Dark World I did not see, and I personally don't really have I personally don't really like that film all that much, but then again, I didn't really watch it all that good. I did try to see it.
Not a lot of people like that movie. I honestly did. I mean, it wasn't the best Marvel movie out of the group, but no, but I did like it.
Yeah.
Continue.
Yeah, but the third film though, this one, to say that it is a fun movie is an understatement with this one, because there's a lot of good moments, a lot of good funny moments, but there's also a lot of good action, and in a sense, you really do get not just in a sense, but you really do get the sense that that Thor has really gone through quite a bit of character development, especially when you compare him to how he was in the very beginning of the first Thor movie. How he was kind of vain, a bit arrogant at times. And then when you take it over to the third film, he's definitely changed quite a bit, and for the better. So, which is really good, and it's in keeping with his character. And of course, Loki's there along for the ride, and of course, as usual, Tom Hiddleston just chews up the scenery as he is wont to do as Loki. The Hulk is in there, as most people may have seen from the trailer. So basically, in a nutshell, it's a great movie, and just fun. Just really gets you to just root for everybody, and it really does give you a good little not too much, but a little bit of a setup for the big thing that's to come, which is of course Avengers: Infinity War.
Right. I'm excited about it. I haven't seen it yet. I haven't had time to go to the movie theaters. I do want to see it though. It looks like a good, fun movie. It looks very tonally different than Thor has been before. It looks more Guardians of the Galaxy
Yeah, that's
tone,
that's the
tone.
vibe I got too.
Yeah, than the original. I did like the first movie, although it wasn't the best Marvel movie in my opinion. The second one was all right. There are a lot of people who have problems with it, but I'm okay with it. And then the third movie I haven't seen yet, and I'm excited to see it. So yeah. All right, so let's move on to we talked a little bit about Star Wars, so let's talk about it again. So real quick, give us a review of The Legends of Luke Skywalker.
Yes. Well, basically, in a nutshell, it's just a fun little book that's got a lot of basically told tales about Luke Skywalker, and without spoiling too much, but basically, as you read through the book, it's told through the points of view of several different characters. Much like with kind of like with some of the other books that took place before The Force Awakens. It's kind of told from the point of view of certain characters kind of just hanging around and just kind of like saying, oh yeah, I heard this story, or I heard this story. Well, it's exactly that same kind of feel. Only, as is the case with it sort of like being like a told tales type thing, it's, a lot of some of the stuff is very much embellished.
Yes.
To say the least. But that's okay because, because when somebody becomes a legend, there's a lot of stories, both real. There's a lot of stories that are told about this person that sometimes can be both real, and some of it's just flat out so out there that that it doesn't really take much thought to know that, oh yeah, this is completely made up. But what I like about the book is that it really showcases just how much of essentially how almost like how Luke by this point has kind of reached demigod status because of what he has managed to accomplish.
Right.
But you do get a sense that because he isn't really seen in the galaxy all that much now, people really don't know, like, where'd he go? Did he exist? Or is it just some folklore that people talk about?
That's a big question mark that we have right now, is what happened to Luke Skywalker after Return of the Jedi. Now, obviously, we do know for a fact that he went around looking for Jedi artifacts and kind of clues to the past of the Jedi.
Which is funny because I was kind of, I always felt, and again, maybe this is just me, but I always felt that at least Obi-Wan, Yoda, and especially Anakin would have filled Luke in on those details. Right. And then after, but then again, even if they did tell him the full details, which I don't care what Obi-Wan and Yoda say, Luke had a right to know the full details, especially in regards to what led to his dad going dark and all that jazz. But anyway, I'm going on a tangent. But and I always felt that they would have told him at least the bulk of it, and then from there, Luke probably would have been. But yeah, that would have made more. Because them telling him, that entire story, if they did anyway, would have made Luke even more determined to be like, you know what, I got to go out there and find more stuff. Which I'm sure at least his dad would have been like, go for it.
We do know this is true because in several books and things that have Luke in it, specifically Shattered Empire, and later on when we talk a little bit about it, Star Wars Battlefront 2. Luke is looking for something. Like, the Force usually calls out to him and he goes to a specific place and tries to find whatever is calling to him.
Yeah.
In Shattered Empire, spoiler alert for Shattered Empire, but you've had a long time to read it by now, so spoiler alert. In Shattered Empire, Luke goes to find the Force tree that was in the Jedi Temple. So if you remember the tree from Clone Wars that Yoda saw in the courtyard, that is a Force-sensitive tree.
Wait a minute. Was this in the movies?
It was in the Clone Wars animated series.
Oh, okay.
Especially if you saw the Lost Missions season.
Yeah, I've been meaning to do that. Oh, speaking of which, that reminds me, because I was on YouTube. And I was watching a clip from the Genndy Tartakovsky Clone Wars,
right,
aka the guy who did Samurai Jack. And there's a clip I saw of a vision of Anakin as a 10-year-old, but this time with Qui-Gon there standing next to him. And basically, and Qui-Gon is telling him, it's calling to you. And Anakin says, the tree?
Mm-hmm.
And then Qui-Gon tells me, you got to go in there. And Anakin, says, I'm afraid. But Qui-Gon says, look, you're the chosen one. You got to be tested. You can do this. And then Anakin starts walking. But right when Qui-Gon says your final test is at hand, trust in the Force, the shot is basically of Anakin going into a tree that looks eerily similar to what you're talking about. And spoilers, for those who haven't seen the Last Jedi trailers, that tree looks very, very similar to that same scene, almost. I mean, of course, granted, in the Tarkovsky episode, you can't really make heads or tails if the tree looks exactly the same, right. But there's enough of it there in the shot to kind of get a sense that, okay, this looks really good. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, simply look it up on YouTube. It's there.
Well, please also remember that even though this breaks my heart to say this, honestly, the Clone Wars animated series that was made by Genie Tartakovsky is not canon anymore.
But I wonder if they got the idea from that.
Probably. Who knows? But yeah, the tree that they're talking about is the tree that, if you've seen Clone Wars, it's in the courtyard. Yoda sees it in his vision, and you also see it in the courtyard. But it is a force-sensitive tree. Mm-hmm. And Luke, actually, with the help of Poe Dameron's mom, actually saves two halves of the tree. One he keeps, and the other he gives to Poe's mother. So, what does this mean? We do not know. So, there are all kinds of things like this that have been brought out. And if I could jump on, because you're doing a book review, I kind of want to jump on and do my own one. I just recently listened to an audiobook version of A Certain Point of View, which is a really cool short story book by a lot of different authors, including Paul Dini, Ashley Eckstein, Neil Patrick Harris. All have done like little pieces of it. And what it does basically is it follows the story of A New Hope, but follows it from background characters' perspective. Now, unlike the stories of Luke Skywalker, these are actually from their perspective, but are not told by them. So they're not really too much embellished, if you will.
So it's not really done in a narrative format? Right.
Well,
or is it?
The stories are ordered so that you literally can follow the movie with the stories.
Yeah, okay.
So, but each story is told from a different character's point of view. Some of them are really funny. There are some that, I'm not gonna lie, I cried. Because there's a couple of them that are very sad. Couple of them are from characters that were in other books, comics. Dr. Aphra from the comics actually makes an appearance in there. And this is all taking place during A New Hope. Oh. It's a really good book. I highly suggest it. You get to see A New Hope from different perspectives. And again, like I said, some of them are funny, some of them are interesting, some of them are, some of them are just really, really serious, and some of them are heart-wrenching and hit you in the feels. Oh, man. But yeah,
maybe I should check that out.
I highly suggest it. It's a big book. It's called From a Certain Point of View. It's basically celebrating the 40th anniversary of Star Wars. And I highly suggest the book. All right, let's move on to my points. I have 4.
Okay.
So continuing on with Star Wars, I have my review for Star Wars Battlefront 2. Now, I'm not going to get into the controversy that has been going around because of Battlefront 2's multiplayer. Because everyone and their mom has talked about it. Every podcast has talked about it. I did not, let me be frank when I say this. I did not buy Battlefront 2 for its multiplayer, okay? I bought Battlefront 2 for its story mode. The story mode is what sold me on the game, okay? Nothing else. And because of that, I bought the game and played through the story mode. And let me tell you right now, and again, I won't spoil anything. This is a spoiler-free review for those of you who have not played it. It is probably one of the best Star Wars games I've played in a long, long time. And I'm talking, I think the last Star Wars series of games that I absolutely loved was probably the Rogue Squadron series of games.
So, yeah, those were cool.
Rogue Squadron, those were cool. Rogue Leader. I really love those games. Probably Dark Forces up there. Battlefront 2 is definitely up there with my favorite games, mainly because of the story mode. And here's the reason why. I have several different reasons why. The reason why is because not only is it a really good story that takes place in the time period that I really, really would love to see more of, that in between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens. But also, it rewards those of us who are big fanatics of Star Wars and love to read the books and the comics and the everything that has happened in that era. There's a lot of things that take place in the game that I absolutely love, and they put a nod to you, and like you're so happy. In fact, one of the levels of the story, and I won't give too much away because I won't tell you what happens, is actually directly from one of the comics in the Marvel Comics. One of the comic series they did. And to see that and actually play through that scenario made me very, very happy. Not only that, but they also put nods and to different other parts of the story, and also put nods to like classic Star Wars extended universe things, all the Legends timeline and whatnot. There's a lot of little nods to those things as well. But it's a really, really good representation of Star Wars, and I really did enjoy it. I love the characters. You get to see the destruction of the Death Star from the Imperial point of view. This Death Star 2, sorry, by the way. I just want to make sure Death Star 2. You get to see it from the Imperial's point of view, and it's quite interesting. And I really, really applaud the people who worked on the story mode, who wrote the story, who did all the mocap and acting, and you could tell that all the people that worked on the story mode part of this game really, really loved Star Wars and really put nods to it. So I highly suggest it if you're a Star Wars fan. If you are just getting this game for multiplayer, then I don't know whether to recommend it or not, because honestly, there is so much controversy going over, and the game is actually not selling very well. Not as well as they were hoping because of it. Because there's a lot of people who actually, because of what happened in the multiplayer, have canceled their pre-orders. And I feel it's a shame because the story mode is worth it, in my opinion. In my opinion, the story mode is worth the price of the game. Just that alone is worth it.
Yeah. Well, actually, if I can chime in, I know what you're talking about because I actually got a chance to see somebody had put up like some gameplay footage of them playing it, which I believe is what the beta version or the
probably beta version. Basically, the multiplayer,
but somehow they were able to show footage of them playing the single player version,
right?
Basically, the story mode that you were talking about. And granted, I don't have a PlayStation. Right. I do not have an Xbox, but however, though, that doesn't mean that I'm not going to give a thumbs up to a good game when I see one.
Right.
And let me tell you, I know what you're talking about because having seen the footage, having seen the actual gameplay of the story mode for Battlefront 2, not the multiplayer, but the story mode, I say that yes, it is worth the price.
Yeah.
Because it really does do some very interesting things with the story that tie directly into what happened both from episode 6 and very much what happened after. And in fact, again, if you've read any of the Aftermath books, then it's tied directly with it. It's tied directly with it. And
you'll see a lot of nods and a lot of different things. I really did enjoy that about the story mode. So if you really want a good Star Wars game, I highly suggest it. I'm kind of wishing that they would make... Now, I will say this, okay? The end of the game, which I promise I won't spoil, it leaves you wanting more, okay? I want to know more, so I'm hoping that there's maybe some DLC down the road, or maybe if they just release the story mode of the game in its own separate little thing, would be nice. But I highly suggest it if you're a Star Wars fan.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, well, if they do decide to go the DLC route, I won't be surprised if they do, because it seems like DLC seems to be it seems to be the way to go these days with certain games.
Right. My theory is that the reason why it leaves the ending of the story mode leaves you wanting more is because I feel that the next half of the story probably takes place during Last Jedi and maybe spoils some things for Last Jedi. So I'm thinking possibly they're waiting until after Last Jedi comes out, and then they're going to give us the DLC for the story mode. which I would gladly pay an extra, $10-20 if that's the way that I have to, get into it. But I did really like it. But I won't spoil it, but it is a very good story.
Yeah. But what do you think of the fact that they're adding in Kylo Ren and Rey in there as playable characters? And I think they're adding in, maybe one other character in there as well.
It was pretty cool. I mean, when you first load up the game, they actually allow you to play because, for those of you who don't own a PlayStation 4, when you upload a game for the first time, they have to upload half of the game onto your hard drive. So they literally have to save half of the game on your hard drive. So while it's saving half of the game on your hard drive, you can actually play some matches, just some multiplayer matches by yourself, and you get to play from the First Order. So you get to kind of try out that, and then you get to play Kylo Ren as kind of your first quote-unquote hero character.
Yeah.
So you do get to do that, and then through the story mode, you also get to play other heroes as well through the story mode.
What do you think of the rumor that supposedly, because there have been rumors running around that supposedly they may add an Anakin or Obi-Wan as well, and I'm talking like Anakin Skywalker in his Episode 3 look.
Right, I wouldn't be surprised if that happened. In fact, honestly, I would love to see Anakin, Obi-Wan, maybe Ahsoka.
Yeah,
would be kind of cool. They have Darth Maul. They have a lot of different characters from the different sagas. They don't have a whole lot of prequel characters, but they do have Darth Maul. They do have one of the hero characters for the Separatist is a super battle droid you get to play. You do have Darth Vader, Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia, which, by the way, let me add that Princess Leia has her look from the comics, which is really cool. You get to have different characters with different costumes. So if you got the Elite Trainer box like I did, you get to have Kylo Ren and Rey's outfit from The Last Jedi. So there's all kinds of cool stuff that you get from the game, and a lot of nods to Star Wars past and present and stuff like that. The maps are huge, especially in story mode. You get to play through some of these maps, and my gosh. Also, the vehicle combat is very tight. I think it's a lot better than the original Battlefront on the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One was. I got to play several different vehicles. I won't tell you all of them, but I can tell you the Millennium Falcon was one of them, and a TIE Fighter was another one. X-Wing was another one.
Of course.
It made me feel like I was playing Rogue Squadron again, which was really cool. So I did enjoy that a lot, and I do like the characters a lot, especially since I had actually read the prequel book. There's a prequel to the game called Inferno Squadron, and it's kind of tells you how the Inferno Squadron was formed, and then you get to play the game, and you already know the characters. You can jump right into it, knowing where the characters have come from. And by the way, I highly suggest that book too if you really like Star Wars and want to get into it. It's a very good book, although slightly depressing.
Of course,
but it's still a good book, and it sets up their characters. So Battlefront 2, very very good game. I played it through. I'm hoping that there's more to the story, because I honestly ended the game and went, "That's it? That's the end? What? Well, I want to see more." But anyways, on to our next review. Our next review is going to be what we call a first impressions review. Now, again, for those of you who didn't hear our special edition podcast for Super Mario Odyssey, this is a first impressions review. That means we didn't play through the entire game yet. We probably got to a certain point in the game. Personally, I am still on my second grand trial right now. I only beat my first grand trial. So I'm only on the second island right now. I haven't even passed.
Well, at least you're ahead of me. I'm still.
But we're going to talk about something we haven't talked about in a long time, and that is Pokemon. Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon dropped this month. I really like the game. Let's start off with that. I like the game. Okay. The only disappointment I have with the game is I was expecting the game to be a sequel to Sun and Moon. Instead, it is not. It is not a sequel. is a retelling of the original story, just with new elements added. So if you've played Sun and Moon, you know the story elements they're going to go through. They just added a few new things, a few new characters, a few new twists that pop up here and there to change up the formula a little bit. Does that hamper the game? I don't know. If you didn't play Sun and Moon, I would just jump right to Ultra Sun and Moon, because there is a lot of improvements to the game that make the game even more easily accessible than Sun and Moon was, which is actually saying something. Because Sun and Moon really tried to be as accessible as possible. So my first impression of it is that it's a good game. Just don't go into it thinking that it's a Black and White 2 or it's a sequel to the original. It's pretty much the exact same story, just retold with different elements added onto it, which honestly, like I said, that's my only really gripe about the game. I really wish they would have made it DLC for Sun and Moon as opposed to a brand spanking new game, because we're in this kind of age now where they can do that. And I think it would still make a lot of money as opposed to just releasing another game. I think the other thing is the other reason why I was disappointed is because it happened a whole year after Sun and Moon. In fact, it released on the exact same day, 1 year later. So I was a little disappointed that it wasn't a sequel. I was hoping that it was more of a different game, maybe, time lapse it a little bit, whatever. But honestly, that's a small gripe. The game actually does play very well. And the changes to the game are refreshing, although the story is like, okay, I know what's happening now. So, what about you, Danny? Did you enjoy Ultra Sun and Moon? What you have played so far?
Okay, well, so far, yeah, Ultra Sun pretty much plays more or less the same as the original ones. Although I do notice there are a few, like the menu layout is a little bit more. It looks more sharper now, and but for the most part, I was hoping it wouldn't be a carbon copy, and that was one of the reasons why I was sort of initially reluctant at first not to buy them, because I figured, well, if it's going to be a carbon copy of Sun and Moon, what's the point? But what sold me on getting them was because of the fact that, you may get a chance to get all the legendaries. And you may see another certain familiar character from the past return. So
you can talk about it. They've already announced it online. So
okay, all right. So basically, in a nutshell, yeah, Giovanni, the former leader of Team Rocket,
Rainbow Rocket
now.
Honestly, Rainbow Rocket.
I don't know. I'm not sure what. I don't know. I guess maybe Giovanni was being hip. I don't know.
I don't know.
But then again, he did basically, according to game canon, he did get quite the trouncing from Ash or Red. Red. Red pretty much mopped the floor with him in a very, very, very bad way, or at least to him anyway. So who knows? Maybe he just decided to. Maybe he figured by adding an extra name to the title, he figured, this would give his organization more of a hippie feel. I don't know.
Let's be frank. This is not just Giovanni and Team Rocket that's come back. We're going to be able to fight every single villain from every single Pokemon game through the 20 years that Pokemon has been around. So that's kind of awesome.
Whoa. Does he have the DeLorean or TARDIS?
I don't know, but it says that you'll be able to play him, and they announced that online, so it's not a spoiler.
Fine by me, because any day I get to kick the butts of all those guys is fine by me.
Yeah.
Any day.
So, we'll probably talk a little bit more about Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon as we play through it. It has gotten me to dust off my 3DS. Because I haven't played it in a while. I had to dust off my 3DS a little bit. I had to take the dust off. Had to charge it up a little bit.
Yep.
Although it still had half a charge, which I was surprised because I haven't played it in almost a year. So.
That's good.
So, but it has gotten me to get my 3DS back out and start playing it again. So I do enjoy it. The biggest gripe is that it's not a sequel. It's just the exact same game, just with new elements. So that's probably my only gripe about it. So let's move on to another actually news story real quick. So since we're staying with video games, this has to do with one of my favorite indie game series, Shantae Half Genie Hero. Woo! Now, if you haven't played Half Genie Hero, it is out now for all consoles, except for Switch. No, even Switch. Yes, because Switch is just DLC, download only.
Yeah,
so you can get a digital copy on the eShop. But it's for all consoles except for the 3DS. They don't have a 3DS version of it yet. But you can get it for PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Switch. I will have to say I really love the game. I think I've done a review on this before. I've played all the way through it. It's very, very good. The story is very tight. My only gripe about the game is that they took out more of the Castlevania aspect of the game where you can go through like a map. But honestly, it's not that big of a gripe. So they have added DLC to the game. The first DLC pack added a new story mode where you got to play as the villain of the story, Risky Boots.
Oh, yeah.
And this story is actually told from her perspective. So just like with the Legend of Luke Skywalker, a little embellished a little bit. But you get to play through her, and she plays differently than Shantae. So she has all the powers that if you played through the Pirate's Curse game, they're very similar to that. From what I've heard. Now, WayForward did announce that there is one more DLC that's going to be put in for Half Genie Hero, and that is a game. This part of the game is going to be called Friends to the End, and it is going to be a brand new game. Again, using the same levels that we've seen before in the original game. This one is going to be story canon, however. This is not embellishment. This is actually story canon. Good. They're going to take a chunk of the story and that kind of went through very quickly in the regular game, and they're going to kind of embellish it a little bit more. This time, however, you get to play as Shantae's friends, Roddy Tops, Bolo, and Sky, and you get to play all three at once, changing characters at will. Now, each character will have different abilities and different things that you can do. Like my favorite so far is Roddy Tops. Roddy Tops, in case you didn't already could tell from her name, she is a zombie. And you'll be able to actually throw parts of her body over like different things, and she can teleport wherever her body part lands.
Wow!
That's pretty cool. She can like pop her head off and stuff like that. Bolo, of course, has his chain and bolos and whatnot, and then Sky has her birds. This is also a very unique announcement because not only did they announce this, they also announced that this is going to be the first time ever in Shantae game history that a Shantae game will be fully voice acted. Now, if you've played Shantae games before, you know that Shantae has a voice. You can hear her speak, but it's not like the Zelda games. You can only hear like little words and phrases, and then the rest of it's just like
a lot of sound effects.
A lot of sound effects. So this time around, it's going to be voice acted by three very popular voice actors. You can go ahead and look them up online, but I'm very kind of excited about this. So you get to see the story from their point of view, and I think it's going to be really, really awesome, and I can't wait for that to come out. And I'm honestly kind of excited for this to come out too, because that means that the Switch hard copy version will be coming out soon, because they did announce that there's going to be a Switch version, and it's going to come with all the DLC already downloaded onto the game. So I will be purchasing that to help out my girl Shantae. And maybe we'll get that amiibo that I'm waiting on.
They'd be crazy not to make one.
If they can make Shovel Knight amiibos, they can make Shantae amiibos. All I'm saying, they're making 3 different Shovel Knight amiibos. Not lying, they're all there. They need to make some Shantae ones, but I'm going to digress from that. My last bit of news is actually something that I did want to talk about because it happened earlier in the month, and I know that some of you out there will probably be like, oh, I watched that, months ago, blah, 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 blah. But one of my favorite shows of all time, my favorite cartoons of all time, came on Cartoon Network during its Renaissance period. This was a time of Dexter's Laboratory and Powerpuff Girls and Johnny Bravo, and to a lesser, very, very much lesser extent, Courage the Cowardly Dog and Ed and Eddie. So during that Renaissance period, there was a show that I very much loved because it was an action show, but it was an action show with very little dialogue. And just watching the show was like watching a piece of art. This show...
Are we talking about what I think you're talking about?
Yes,
go ahead.
We are. This show ended without having a proper ending because at the time, the creator was working on a little cartoon series based off of a movie called Star Wars. So because of that, they kind of just ended the show and then kind of never came back. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, of course, that show is, of course, Samurai Jack.
Yep, I had a feeling.
Love Samurai Jack and have loved it since the beginning. I really love the story. I really love the artistry of the show. And I finally got a chance to watch the 5th and final season of Samurai Jack. And let me tell you, my gosh, it was so good. It was so very good. One of the things that I was very worried about when they announced that Samurai Jack was coming back and then they announced that it was going to be on Adult Swim was I was afraid that they were going to take it and they were going to adulterize it.
Yeah, give it more of an
I know
adult
that's
vibe.
probably not a good word to say. Yeah, give it an adult vibe, yeah. They gave it an adult vibe. Yeah. And overly so, because I'm not too fond of Adult Swim and their programming. A lot of it. Now, I do admit, I was fans of a lot of some Adult Swim shows that have been on, and I am a fan of Toonami, which is on Adult Swim as well. But as a whole, I'm not a big fan of Adult Swim being part of Cartoon Network. But that's, again, my opinion, not anyone else's. But I did finally watch the 5th season. It came out on DVD this month. I have watched it, and let me tell you, my fears were, for the most part, put to rest. Okay. Yes, they did do some more adult things in the show, but not to the point where I was disgusted or I was, mad, or I was, put off by it. Okay. So it brought back Samurai Jack. It brought back Samurai Jack in a way that I really, really, really enjoyed it. And it gave Samurai Jack the ending that it has deserved for years. And it brought it back around. And it even had more of a character growth than any of the other previous seasons before. Now, just to give you a little bit of groundwork for this season of Samurai Jack, Samurai Jack had 4 seasons before the 5th one, and then they had this huge hiatus, and then Candy was actually the creator of Samurai Jack, kind of had some time to kill, and so he decided to continue on and finally finish, Samurai Jack. So, we have the 5th season now. Now, this is not a full... Like the other episodes were like 24 episodes. This is only maybe, I think 12. They're a little bit longer, but you really get to see Jack's journey in this. And really, honestly, it's about Jack. And you get to see his kind of regression to a dark place, and then you bring him back to where he was originally. Because you have to remember that in the show's timeline, there's a 50-year gap in between the end of season 4 and the beginning of season 5. Ooh. It's a very long gap of time. Samurai Jack is in a darker place now, and you get to follow his journey through this, and I really did enjoy it from start to finish. I really did enjoy how this all worked. I really did enjoy the ending. However, it did hit me in the feels. It hit me in the feels. At the end there. Oh my gosh. Hit me in the feels so hard. I feel that this was a satisfying ending. Now, if they wanted to come back and do more Samurai Jack, I feel that they probably could, but it ties a knot on it so that if they never do any more Samurai Jack ever again, then I'm perfectly satisfied with it. Very, very cool. I really enjoyed it. Samurai Jack, season 5, very, very good. There is some blood. There is some gore. Not a whole lot of gore, but there is some gore. This is not the more kid-friendly show that you watched when you were younger. This is a little bit more adult. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. So I did enjoy it. There is a few swear words in there, so Kitty's probably not a good idea to watch it. But I did enjoy it, and it didn't put me off enough to where I was like, yeah, I'm not watching this, or they ruined my childhood, or anything like that. I did enjoy it. So Samurai Jack Season 5, highly recommend it. It is on Blu-ray and DVD now. Probably on sale if you're going for Black Friday shopping. And I think that's about it for our podcast today. We're going to leave you guys with a monthly question that we want you to answer. In fact, I'm thinking about starting to post these on Instagram, these questions from now on, and whatever answers we get, we'll do on the next podcast. So the question for this month is, what did you think of Star Wars The Last Jedi? What did you think? Now, obviously, as the recording of this podcast, The Last Jedi is not out yet.
No.
But
no.
By the time we record the next podcast, The Last Jedi will be out. We'll probably already be seeing it. We're probably going to do an entire episode, dedicated to that movie, because I'm almost very sure that this movie is going to be really good. I'm going into it with high expectations.
Yeah, me too.
I don't think that's maybe a good idea.
Well, given the movies, given the previous film's track record with Force Awakens and Rogue One, I don't know what to expect. But the beauty of it is, we know that it's going to be good,
Right.
and unlike certain other films that have come out this year, this one's going to deliver
right
in a way we don't, and we still don't know what to expect.
Right, and I'm honestly, to be quite honest, I'm actually staying away from all trailers. I don't want to see. I've seen the first 2 trailers. That's all I need to see. I am going to find out what happens when I get there.
Yep.
I'm trying to keep a blind eye and trying not to do too many spoilers. So, but that is our question for this month. If you would like to throw in your 2 cents about anything that we talked about on the podcast, feel free to do that. You can do that by going to our website, thearcadearchives.com. Again, that's thearcadearchives.com. That is the Arcade Archives Network. That is the blog website that we are a part of. You can actually put your comments on the site there, right on the bottom of this post that if you're listening to it on the site, there's a little comment section that you can actually comment to us, and we will comment back to you. If you can't get to the site, if you're listening to this on whatever podcatcher you're listening to, you can also comment by going to Instagram. You can also comment by doing that, or you can go to Twitter. On Instagram, we are the Arcade Archives Network. Again, that's the Arcade Archives Network. And on Twitter, we are Arcade A Network. Again, that's Arcade A Network. Okay, Arcade A Network. And that's how you can get a hold of us. Now, if you want to get a hold of us personally, I am Ubernerd, Joshua the Ubernerd. You can find me on Instagram at Ubernerd527. And also on Twitter by the same handle, Ubernerd527. Feel free to comment if you'd like on there. And Danny, the Ultrasonic Player, where can they find you on the interwebs?
All right. Well, you can find me on Instagram under the pen name Ultrasonic9, and you can also find me on Twitter under the pretty much the same name. Only my Twitter handle is, of course, UltraSNCPLYR9. Mainly because somebody else had beaten me to the punch with using Ultrasonic as their pen name. So yes, there's that. But that is how you can get a hold of me on Twitter. I'm also on fanfiction.net, where I write fanfiction, and yeah, so you can reach me through any of those ways, and yeah, so stay tuned. Of course, there'll always be there'll always be some articles of some kind popping up, and of course, keep an eye out for video game boomboxes, because I still do those. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thank you guys very, very much for joining us for this episode of our podcast. And we hope to see you next month, where we're definitely going to talk about Star Wars. For the most part,
big time. We
are talking about Star Wars next month, so that'll be our podcast. Don't forget, we also did a special podcast at the beginning of this month on Super Mario Odyssey. So if you haven't got Super Mario Odyssey yet and you want to know a little bit about it, you can see our first impressions review on that as well. So check that out, okay? Well, until next time, Arcaders, thank you so much. This has been Joshua the Ubernerd and Danny the Ultrasonic Player. And Danny, why don't you send us out today?
All right. So Arcaders, keep playing like it's 1981, and of course, keep playing with power, because there are no limits.
See you guys later.
Hey Arcaders, this is Ray Gunn from the Arcade Archives Network. I hope you've enjoyed the podcast that you're listening to. If you're listening on iTunes, please give it 5 stars. A lot of time and patience go into every podcast we do. 5-star ratings help us so we can continue giving you this quality entertainment every month. And don't forget to share us with your friends. If you're listening to us on YouTube, please give us a like and subscribe to our channel. And if you're over on our Facebook page, please like and share. Once again, we do this for you guys and we enjoy doing it every single month, so every little bit helps. So please go online and like us today. Thanks, keep playing like it's 1981, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye now.
Message from headquarters. This is a Rebellion production and is part of the Arcade Archives Network. That is all.